Alright guys, it's gotten to that point of the year where I need to change my engine oil because it's getting pretty old. So I'm just going to make a quick video on how I change the oil and filter on my bike, hoping that it will help you do the same for your own bike, because it's a really easy thing to do, and it will save you a lot of money if you do it yourself rather than to take it to the dealership. For this, all you'll technically need in terms of tools for most bikes anyway is either a 17mm wrench or socket and ratchet. If you want, you can get a torque wrench if you're not confident with doing up bolts and stuff, because you really don't want to strip out the threads on the oil pan, because it is aluminum and it's a steel bolt, so that can happen. Obviously you'll need your oil and filter as well as a funnel to make sure you don't make a mess. I also do have some brake cleaner and a rag to clean up the area underneath when I'm done, and I highly suggest you wear gloves because used oil is really bad. Over there I do have an oil drain pan. If you don't have one of these, just use whatever pan you got laying around, and make sure you take your used oil back to any auto parts shop or garage to get it recycled. Don't dump it down the drain. Before we get started, I did warm up the bike so that the oil will flow out freely. So let's get underneath the bike and drain the oil. Alright, now we're under the bike, and I've already loosened up the drain bolt so I can undo it by hand. So let's just reach down here. This is my drain bolt, so I'm gonna start to undo this. And the trick to this is to always keep pushing up so that you're forcing the bolt towards the oil pan while loosening it, so that you don't get hot oil. And now that it's actually gone out of the threads, you can quickly pull it like that. This way you don't get a lot of hot oil on your hands. Let me just reposition the drain pan. Alright, now we'll just let the bike drain off its oil until it starts to drip, and I'll be back with you then. Alright, while the engine oil is dripping out, this is a good time to inspect your drain bolt. Some of the bikes, the drain bolt will have an actual magnet on the end to collect metal shavings and stuff like that. If you see a whole bunch of metallic particles stuck onto this, it could mean that there's something wrong with the bike, so always check that and clean that off. Now we will go on to actually taking off the oil filter, and in my case it's on the front of the bike over here. The last time when I installed an oil filter, I installed one with a nut, so it's easy to take off. If you have a regular spin-on, there are special tools you can get that'll like clamp onto it and spin it off for you. But since it does have the nut, I can simply put the ratchet there and begin to loosen it. Now I do have my oil collecting pan underneath to catch any of the oil that's left in the oil filter housing. So I'll just keep spinning this off, and getting an oil filter with a bolt at the end really does help. Alright, it's loose. Now we can spin it off by hand. Yep, and you can see there's oil coming out. Continue to spin it off. There you go. It's off. And we're gonna pull it out and dump it down there. We're just gonna leave it there to let it drain out. Now we'll go ahead and install the new oil filter, but first we will clean around this area and wait for the oil to stop dripping out before we install the new oil filter. So I'll get back to you once this stops dripping out and I've cleaned the area. Alright, as you can see, I've cleaned out the housing and it's finally stopped dripping. So now we can get on to installing our new oil filter. But before you do this, you want to make sure you get a bit of clean oil and put it on this O-ring over here, so it won't be that difficult to tighten it against the oil filter housing, because dry rubber sticks really well to dry metal. So if you lubricate this O-ring over here, it'll be really easy to tighten this against the oil filter housing. So let's go ahead and do that. So get your fresh oil. Just put your finger in there and just put a thin coat of oil all around that, and now we can install the oil filter. So always get this started by hand. Okay, it's a bit tricky with one hand, but okay, there we go. It's called the threads. And you want to keep spinning this in until it just touches the casing. Right here. So this is where it touches. And then from here, all you really need is anywhere between a half to 3/4 of a turn. I'm gonna cheat here and use my ratchet spanner to tighten it down, just because I'm filming with one hand. But okay, so you should really be doing this by hand, but I'm gonna cheat by using this. And all you really need is anywhere from a half to 3/4 turn, and that's it. That's all you need. Okay, now we'll go to installing the drain bolt and finally filling it up with oil. The first thing we're going to do is just quickly clean up around the area with the rag and brake cleaner. Make sure there's no oil left. As you can see, it's still dripping, so I do have the pan underneath to catch all that. Alright, there we go. Now we get the drain bolt. If you want, you can change the washer on this, but I mean, it's never leaked on me, and I've done plenty of these with the same washer, so I'm just going to reuse it. But if you want to, you can change out the washer on the bolt. So always get this started by hand. There we go. That's seated. Now I'm going to move the drain pan out of the way. Closer look. Again, I'm just going to clean the area off. Now to tighten this, I'm going to get the 17 mil. Slap it on. Now, notice how I'm actually holding the ratchet. You don't need to be all the way out here, because you really don't want to strip the threads on this. So all it takes is that's it. You don't have to turn it any further. And again, if you're not confident with tightening up bolts, you could always use the torque wrench, but I've done this method and it's never leaked on me. If it does leak on you guys, you can always come back and tighten it up a bit more, but this is perfect. So it's really important to clean the area, because once we fill it up with oil and start the bike, we want to check for any leaks. So take this time to really clean around the bolt and the oil filter so we can check for leaks later on. Now we get to the point of actually filling the bike up with oil. On most bikes you will have this glass window next to your clutch casing, and this is to represent the oil level in the bike. So there's a low and full level over here. As well as that, most bikes will tell you how much oil to use. But this is generally an oil change only, so if you change the filter as well, you're going to need a little bit more oil than what's actually printed on the bike. As you can see, I've taped up my funnel to make this easier on myself, so I can do this with one hand. But yeah, you can do this too. It makes it a lot easier to pour the oil. So now I'll get to actually filling the bike up with oil until I see the oil come up on the glass window. And now I've only poured about 3 liters of oil in, but you can already see that the oil level has come up on the window. But the thing is, we did change the oil filter as well. So what we want to do is start up the bike. Make sure you take your funnel out and put your filler cap back in. Start up the bike so we circulate the oil throughout the bike to get a better reading. And most importantly, to fill up that oil filter with oil. So we'll just stay right there. We'll start the bike. Make sure you, yeah, there we go. Make sure you see the oil light go off. That means there is oil in the engine. And that's all you need to circulate the oil throughout the engine. And you can see that my oil level has dropped. So what I'm going to do is fill it back up with oil until it comes to the full line, and yeah, I'll get back to you after that. Okay, now I have the bike topped up with oil fully. This entire time I've been checking underneath the drain bolt as well as around the oil filter housing to make sure nothing's leaking. As you may have noticed, I do have the bike on rear and front stands, and that's just to make it easier on myself and to make it easier to film. But you can easily do this with the side stands. It's not a problem. You have more than enough room to get under there and crack the drain bolt and everything. One thing you should note is when you're taking this reading for the oil, the bike does need to be upright. So just note that if you're doing this with the side stand, is to make the bike upright when you go to check this reading. There are certain bikes where you only replace the oil filter cartridge, and for that there will be a oil filter housing somewhere around the bike where you just need to undo the housing and just replace the cartridge inside. I will have a video coming out for bikes that do require that certain type of oil filter, but other than that, so you can take the bike out for a test ride now and come back and check for any leaks.